Describes a recent visit she made to Dwayne Buck.
He came down from death row to receive his lethal injection sentencing at the county jail, and his sister Monique and I went to visit, and I had a wonderful visit with him. I let him know that through everything that had happened, I found forgiveness within my heart. I went to church and I prayed along with family members and my pastor until I found it in my heart to forgive. So when I was able to talk back with him or through letters of writing, then I let him know that he was forgiven through Christ.
That is Dwayne Buck's stepsister, Phyllis Taylor. The significance of this, Linda Geffin, in Houston, of one of his victims, she wasn't killed, forgiving him.
I think it's unprecedented. It's huge. Most victims and victims' families of these types of crimes are often out for revenge. But the fact that she was shot in the chest, recovered, and has found it in her heart to forgive him is extremely significant. Look, Harris County has the unfortunate reputation of being the death penalty capital of the world. Now we have a golden moment for Harris County to stand for justice. Phyllis Taylor has forgiven him. There are many elected officials and people in this community who are supporting the new resentencing hearing. Clearly, as you said at the top, that we're not asking for him to be released. That's silly. Just a new colorblind resentencing hearing.
I want to go to the Texas Tribune. I want to talk about his lawyer, Dwayne Buck's lawyer. They said Jerry Garanot's a Texas public defender noted for his involvement in numerous death penalty cases. In total, Garanot has represented 39 clients facing capital punishment, of which 20 have received the death sentence. His record has attracted significant media controversy considering his ability and the number of cases he was allowed to take on. However, Garanot has maintained the judges routinely assign him the most difficult and horrific cases, often involving multiple murders or the murder of a child. He's been dubbed Death Penalty Express, America's most lethal attorney, and the Undertaker for the state of Texas by various media outlets. You were up against him, Linda Geffin, in this case as you prosecuted Dwayne Buck. Your response to his representation in the original trial?
I can't comment on the comments in the Texas Tribune. I know that he's a very effective attorney. He had a co-counsel in that case, and I do believe he is frequently appointed to death penalty cases. Here in Harris County, you have to qualify to represent a defendant on a capital case, and he's an effective attorney.
He gained international notoriety in 2009 when his client, Linda Carty, a British citizen charged with murder and sentenced to death, appealed her case to the Supreme Court, claiming incompetent legal counsel. According to a report in the New York Times, Garanot met with her once for only 15 minutes before her trial. The case involving Carty drew much attention about Garanot's career. He no longer handles capital punishment cases. However, the Houston Chronicle reported Garanot handled more than 2,000 criminal cases between 2007 and 2008, more than 12 times the caseload limit accepted by the National Legal Aid and Public Defender Association. Christina Swarns, can you comment further?
Yeah, I think it's quite clear that Mr. Garanot provided Mr. Buck with inadequate representation in this case. Obviously, this is a man that stood by and allowed testimony suggesting that his client's race formed the basis, an appropriate basis of a 5A.
He brought that psychologist onto the stand.
He did.
Right?
And then when the state elicited this specific link on cross-examination, he did not object. You know, he allowed this testimony to go before the jury in this case. I would add further that he also did an inadequate job in terms of representing Mr. Buck in presenting mitigating evidence. There was an abundance of evidence that the jury should have heard about Mr. Buck's life, about his upbringing, about the adversity that he faced that was absolutely available at the time of his trial but was not presented. Mr. Garanot's record, as described in the articles that you've talked about, as just recounted in the McCarty case, is absolutely reflected also in Mr. Buck's case.
And Christina Swarns, you deal with the issue of the death penalty a lot with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. How typical is this in terms of representation? And final comment on this case.
In terms of Mr. Garanat, it's an unfortunate reality that capitally charged defendants in this country routinely receive poor counsel. That said, I think this case really is above and beyond the pale with respect to seeing someone facing execution because of the color of their skin. This is a case where that link has been made explicit. That argument was presented to a jury, and the argument was found by the jury and credited by the jury, and this man is now on death row facing execution. Texas promised that no person with this kind of testimony would be executed, and Texas needs to live up to its promise. It needs to honor the promise it made to Mr. Buck, because no one should be executed because of the color of their skin. And if Mr. Buck is executed on that basis, then all of us should be worried.
So explain what happens now in the case of Dwayne Buck.
The case is now in front of the Court of Criminal Appeals in Texas. We have filed an appeal on Mr. Buck's behalf. The Court of Criminal Appeals can either remand our case to the district court for a hearing and further review of the claims that we've raised, or it can reject or dismiss or deny our appeal and send Mr. Buck's case to the Supreme Court.
Before you go, Linda Geffin, I wanted to talk about a different issue with you. You know, we just had a segment on the killing of the district attorney and his wife in Texas, as well as the Kaufman County assistant prosecutor. We don't know who have killed them. I mean, this all happened in Texas, where you are as well. You work in the district attorney's office in Houston and Harris County. You had your own experience being viciously attacked in your home. Could you talk about that, if you would, right now?
Sure. In addition to working on Mr. Buck's case, my main job is a civil attorney at the county attorney's office, using civil remedies to close down fronts for human trafficking. We had a successful run. We closed down many illegal enterprises, and one Saturday I came home, and before I knew it, I was brutally beaten, and I ended up in the ICU for a week, and I had a skull fracture and serious head injuries, as well as some other injuries. Many people that I know in the human trafficking field were so certain and told me to get out of my house, that it's related to the work I'm doing. But there's this tendency to not believe that attorneys, prosecutors, people working on these types of cases get hit. And I was the target of a hit, and the perpetrators are still out there. About a month after this happened to me in the city of Arlington, Texas, another city attorney had a hit taken out on them, also working on sexually oriented businesses. They caught that guy, and it's clearly, from your earlier segment, it's something that goes on that people don't recognize.
I'm looking at an article in the Houston Chronicle that talked about the fact that you, Linda Geffin, were beaten senseless by an unidentified intruder who left your skull cracked and bleeding, and eye blackened, massive fist-sized bruises on your chin and your chest. Yet now they have not found the person who did this. And this is how many years later? Or how many months later?
It's about a year and a half. It happened September 17th, 2011. And no, they haven't found anybody.
You weren't raped, you weren't robbed.
No, and that's one of the reasons it points to a professional job. I had money out, I had jewelry out, nothing was taken, nothing was disturbed, I wasn't sexually assaulted, and it was clearly, and by the nature of the injuries on my head and the back of my head, the certain shapes of them, A friend of mine, former special ops, told me that that's either somebody who knows martial arts or a professional hit. So it's you know, if somebody had followed me home from the grocery store, had me unconscious, it's likely I would have been sexually assaulted, or they would have taken things from my home. But they were in, they were out. I was unconscious for a day and a half till Sunday when a friend came by, and I'm very, very grateful to have lived through it.
Now, you certainly have been public about your fight against human trafficking. You agreed to speak on the Today Show and Texas Monthly, host of community groups, launched a website called uncoolbeans.com to show how modern slavery, day slavery, enters the supply chain of common commodities, joined the region's Federal Human Trafficking Rescue Alliance. Has this changed the way you do your work? How do you protect yourself now?
It changed for a while. It took me a year to recover, and I'm doing a lot better now. And what it has done for me, actually, in an ironic twist of fate, is I look at my assault as a gift. I look at it with gratitude, because there aren't many moments in one's life where you're actually brought to your knees and given the opportunity to reconstruct, redo, throw away the bad, enhance the good, and I have a much greater sense of clarity now. And I am very adamant about things that are important to me, and they generally fall under the categories of justice, the whole slave trade, which is, of course, a huge growing industry, child labor, and Mr. Buck's case, which is a poster child for what is wrong with the death penalty. But I can now approach these cases with a lot of clarity, and I've been inspired for many years by a quote by Elie Wiesel, who says there may be times when we are powerless to prevent injustice, but there must never be a time when we fail to speak out. And that quote resonates with me even stronger now.
Finally, Linda Geffin, the response of other prosecutors in your office. You're still in the Harris County DA's office. You're assistant prosecutor there, coming out for commuting of Dwayne Buck's sentence, even though you were involved with helping to achieve his death sentence.
Yeah, actually, I've gone across the street. I'm with the county attorney's office. Here in Harris County, it's two separate buildings. I was with the DA's office for 10 years. Now I'm with the county attorney's office. And I haven't, it's different buildings, but I haven't heard any negativity about what I'm doing.
Well, I want to thank you so much, and I'm so sorry you've gone through what you've gone through personally. Linda Geffin, assistant prosecutor who helped win the death sentence for Dwayne Buck in '97, now opposes his execution. And thanks so much to Christina Swarns, NAACP Legal Defense Fund, head of the Criminal Justice Project there. Thanks so much for watching this report from Democracy Now!, your daily independent global news hour. We don't accept advertising or corporate funding, but rather rely on donations from viewers like you. Please make your contribution by visiting democracynow.org. We need your support today to keep bringing you this hard-hitting, in-depth reporting.